My name is Mathers, and I am 35 years old. I got played. Completely, thoroughly played. But here's the part that still makes my stomach tighten when I think about it. I figured it out before my husband could finish the con. We'd been together 10 years, married 7, and for most of that time, I honestly believed we were solid. He worked in marketing. I'm in software development. Between the two of us, we did well enough to be comfortable. The kind of comfortable where you stop double-checking small purchases and start making plans for the future without fear. The house helped. 5 years ago, I inherited it from my grandfather, and it changed everything. No mortgage hanging over us, just upkeep, utilities, and the illusion of security. I thought we were building a life. I didn't realize he was building an exit. It started about 3 months ago, subtle enough that I could talk myself out of it. He wasn't distant exactly, just off, like someone had shifted his attention to a different frequency. His phone lived face down. Working late became his default status. Weekend team-building events ran past midnight. And this one woman from work, a colleague he'd mentioned maybe twice in 2 years, suddenly became the main character in every story. She suggested this restaurant. She helped with that presentation. She's so funny, you'd like her. I mentioned it once, gently, because I didn't want to be the suspicious wife. I told him he talked about her a lot. He looked at me like I'd grown a second head and asked if I was serious right now. He said she was a colleague and told me I was being insecure. That shut me up. No one wants to be the jealous one, the controlling one, the stereotype everyone rolls their eyes at. So I swallowed it. I convinced myself stress looked like this sometimes. That was my first big mistake. Over the next month, he ramped up in ways I didn't recognize at first because he masked it as honesty. He started criticizing everything. My clothes were boring. My hobbies were childish. My friends were going nowhere. Little cuts, constant, like he was sanding me down. Then he moved into the guest room. He said I snored and he had an important presentation coming up. I don't snore, never have. But I let it happen anyway because part of me still wanted to believe this was a phase and that if I stayed calm, we'd get through it. One night, he left his iPad in the home office, unlocked, sitting there like a trap I didn't know I was walking into. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for a charging cable. Then a message notification popped up on the screen and my stomach dropped before my brain could catch up. Miss you already. Tonight was amazing. I clicked it before I could stop myself, like my finger had its own panic. The thread opened, and suddenly I wasn't looking at one message. I was looking at months, explicit photos, detailed plans, conversations about me, about how clueless I was, about how easy this was. The words didn't just hurt, they rearranged everything I thought I knew. One message stood out, sharp as a blade. When are you finally leaving her? His response was worse. Soon. Need to set things up right. Can't leave without getting what I deserve. I sat there for what felt like an hour, staring at that screen, my heartbeat loud in my ears. This wasn't a crisis. This wasn't him making a mistake. This was strategy. He wasn't just cheating. He was building a narrative. And I could feel it now when I replayed the last few weeks, the way he'd been picking fights about nothing, the way he'd been dropping little comments around friends about how tense things felt at home, the way he'd started posting vague, passive-aggressive things about knowing your worth. He was setting me up. I didn't confront him. I didn't throw the iPad. I didn't wake him up and scream. I did the one thing he wasn't counting on. I stayed calm. I took screenshots of everything. I backed it up to a cloud account he didn't know existed. Then I put the iPad back exactly where I found it and walked out of that room like my life hadn't just split in half. For the next week, I watched him. Really watched him. The way he smiled at his phone when he thought I wasn't looking. The way he suddenly cared about how our friends saw him. The way he kept nudging me into reacting, hoping I'd snap so he could point and say, "See, this is what I deal with." Then he dropped the next move like it was a gift. 2 weeks later, he announced we were throwing an anniversary party. 7 years, he said. We need to celebrate. Let's do it big. This from a man who'd forgotten our last 2 anniversaries, who'd been sleeping in the guest room, who'd spent the previous month telling me I wasn't enough. That's when I knew he wanted a stage. He wasn't going to leave quietly. He was going to make me the villain in front of an audience. He was going to accuse me publicly, bait me into reacting, and use the spectacle to win a divorce settlement like it was a chess game. I smiled and said, "Sure, sounds great." And while he sent invitations and planned his performance, I started preparing mine. The next call I made wasn't to him, and it wasn't to a friend. It was to my brother. He does corporate law, not family law, but he knows how people think when money and reputations are involved. I didn't dramatize it. I didn't cry. I just told him I thought my husband was cheating and that I had proof. There was a pause on the line, the kind that tells you someone is recalculating. Then he told me to listen carefully. He said if I was right, this wasn't just an affair, it was positioning. And positioning always comes before a strike. He put me in touch with a divorce attorney the same day. She didn't sugarcoat anything. She said if my husband was still playing house while having an affair and quietly shaping a story where I was the problem, then he wasn't planning a clean exit. He was planning leverage. She told me to document everything, not tip my hand, and protect my assets immediately. The calm way she said it scared me more than anger would have. I opened my own bank account that night and moved half of our shared savings into it. Completely legal. I made copies of every important document in the house. The deed showing the house was inherited before marriage. My grandfather's will, insurance policies, retirement statements. I didn't leave anything to chance. While he slept in the guest room, convinced he was 10 steps ahead, I was quietly removing the board from under his feet. Then I did the thing that changed everything. I got her number. He'd been careless. Left his phone on the kitchen counter while he showered one evening, screen lighting up with her name. I memorized the number and put the phone back exactly where it had been. The next morning, while he was at work, I called it. My heart was pounding, but I kept my voice steady when she answered. "Hey," I said, "this is Mathers. I'm married to him." Dead silence. I told her I knew about the affair, that I wasn't calling to threaten her or scream. I just wanted to understand what I was dealing with before I filed for divorce. I said it calmly, almost politely. Something about that threw her off. She tried to hang up. I asked if we could meet. Just once, woman to woman, no drama. We met at a coffee shop 2 days later. I recorded everything on my phone, legally, without telling her. One-party consent state. She looked nervous, guilty, but also defensive, like she'd rehearsed a version of the truth she thought I wanted. She told me it started 8 months ago at a conference out of state. They'd been flirting before that, but that's when it became physical, Tuesdays and Saturdays, like clockwork. She told me he said I was emotionally abusive, that I controlled the money, that I isolated him from his friends. None of it was true, and even she seemed uncomfortable saying it out loud. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. She said he'd been talking about the divorce like it was a game, that he needed witnesses, that he planned to accuse me publicly of cheating so I'd either admit it or lose control. Either way, he'd look like the victim. She said he wanted to make me look unstable so the settlement would favor him. I thanked her for her honesty, paid for her coffee, and walked out without looking back. In my car, I listened to the recording again, hands shaking this time because it confirmed what I'd felt in my gut for weeks. This wasn't just betrayal, it was premeditated. I edited the recording that night, trimmed it down to the essential parts, her admitting the affair, the timeline, the plan to set me up at the party. I tested it through the Bluetooth speaker in the living room, the same one he loved using when friends came over. It sounded clear, too clear. The party was 3 days away. He spent the entire day before it getting ready. Haircut, new suit, practicing smiles in the mirror. He looked good, I'll give him that. Probably for her. Guests started arriving early evening. My parents brought champagne. His parents brought a gift. Friends mingled, laughing, oblivious. He stayed close to me, arm around my waist, playing the attentive husband like it was second nature. After about an hour, he clinked his glass. It was time. The room quieted the way it always does when someone taps glass with intention. Conversation softened into murmurs, then stopped. He smiled, waited for the attention to settle, and thanked everyone for coming. 7 years is a milestone, he said, his voice warm, practiced. I stood beside him, close enough to feel the tension in his arm, the faint tremor of adrenaline. I knew this version of him well, confident, charming, ready to perform. Then his energy shifted. He took a breath like it hurt to keep breathing and said he couldn't keep pretending. He said he was done living a lie. The room leaned in. A few people exchanged looks, already sensing the shape of the drama. He turned toward me, eyes glassy, voice cracking in a way that would have impressed a casting director. He said he knew I'd been cheating. He said he'd seen messages, the late nights, the secretive calls. He said he was tired of playing happy husband while I betrayed him. There it was, the stage, the witnesses. Someone gasped. His mother stood up halfway out of her chair. My parents stared at me, stunned. A friend reached for my arm. He kept going, stacking accusation on accusation, narrating a version of our marriage where I was cold and distant and checked out, where my ambition had eclipsed my loyalty. He asked how long I thought I could get away with it. He asked how I could look him in the eye and lie. I looked at him and stayed calm. Really? I asked. He snapped back that I shouldn't dare deny it. He said everyone could feel something was wrong, that my behavior proved it. He was crying now, full performance, the kind of tears that demand sympathy. People shifted closer to him, ready to comfort, ready to judge. I let him finish. Then I reached into my pocket and took out my phone. I said I'd been completely faithful. I said that if we were airing everything out in front of everyone, then the lying could finally stop. I connected my phone to the Bluetooth speaker on the mantel, the same one he'd set up earlier for music. I waited until I heard the confirmation tone. Then I hit play. His affair partner's voice filled the room, crisp and unmistakable. She said it started 8 months ago at a conference. She said they met up twice a week, Tuesdays and Saturdays. She said he told her I never noticed. She said he was planning the divorce carefully, that he needed witnesses, that he wanted to make me look bad at a public event so the settlement would favor him. The room didn't just go quiet, it collapsed. Someone swore under their breath. His father stepped back like he'd been shoved. His mother froze, tears stopping mid-fall. Friends who had been standing near him drifted away, their faces changing as the story rewrote itself in real time. I watched it happen without satisfaction, without anger, just clarity. I stopped the recording. He stumbled backward, actually stumbled, like the floor had moved. He asked if I recorded her. He said that was illegal. I told him it was a one-party consent state and completely legal. I added calmly that adultery does affect divorce settlements here. His mouth opened and closed, searching for a line that would save him. None came. He hissed that I set him up. I told him he set himself up. I just came prepared. I apologized to the room. Not because I was sorry, but because I didn't want anyone else caught in the fallout. I said I hadn't wanted it to go down like this, but he was right about one thing. The lying was over. I told him I filed for divorce that morning. He would be served Monday. I suggested he find somewhere else to stay. Then I walked out of my own party. I drove to my brother's place and sat on his couch while my phone exploded. Support poured in. Shock. A few angry messages from his mother. I blocked them all. I slept for the first time in weeks. The next day, my brother helped me change every lock on the house. That afternoon, he showed up pounding on the door, screaming that I couldn't kick him out of his own home. I spoke to him through the door and told him the house was inherited before marriage and never added to the deed. He could check with a lawyer. He screamed for 30 minutes while neighbors watched. I documented everything. He was served at work. Apparently, he made a scene. His affair partner was there. I almost felt bad for her, then remembered the recording. His lawyer called mine and came in hot, talking about the house and spousal support. My lawyer shut it down by asking if his client had mentioned the 8-month affair, the recorded confession, and the 40 witnesses at the party. Silence, then a promise to be in touch. That's when it got weird. I came home one evening to find him inside the house, sitting on the couch like nothing had happened. He'd broken in through a bathroom window. He said we needed to talk. I told him to leave, that he was trespassing. He cried. He said he ended it with her. He said we could fix this. I told him I loved who I thought he was, but that person didn't exist. I told him to leave or I'd call the police. He stood up furious, threatening to take half the house, half my retirement, spousal support for life. I told him the house was mine and his affair would affect alimony. He slammed the door so hard a picture fell off the wall. I called a locksmith, upgraded everything, and added a security system, worth every penny. The next day, HR from his company emailed me. He'd filed a complaint claiming I harassed him by having him served at work. I explained the situation, mentioned the affair with his coworker, and sent the recording. HR went very quiet. They weren't aware of that relationship, and it violated their policy. A few days later, both of them were fired. He texted from another number saying I got him fired and he was suing me. I told him I answered HR's questions and he violated policy. Not my problem. Then I remembered the car. The one he'd been driving for years, the one I bought when his credit was bad, the one I'd been making the payments on. The title was still in my name. I asked my lawyer if I could sell it. She asked whose name was on the title. Mine. Then it was my car. I sold it that afternoon. He left a voicemail that could have powered a city. I forwarded it to my lawyer as evidence of harassment. His lawyer sent a nasty email. My lawyer replied with the title paperwork. That ended that conversation. The divorce moved faster after that, mostly because he kept running out of money for attorneys. He cycled through 3. The first quit after he screamed in his office. The second dropped him when he refused to accept reality about the house. The third tried to salvage what he could. We settled spousal support at $850 a month for 2 years. Temporary, painful, survivable. He tried to argue the recording was some kind of revenge humiliation. The judge didn't buy it. Evidence is evidence. Outside the courtroom, he tried remorse. He asked if the 7 good years meant anything. I told him 8 months of lying outweighed them. He asked if we could be friends. I said no. He said I was throwing everything away. I told him he already had. I was just cleaning up the mess. By the time the divorce paperwork reached its final stages, the chaos had thinned into something quieter but sharper, like broken glass you're careful not to step on. The house felt different without him in it. Not empty, just honest. I repainted the bedroom he'd slept in during those last months, changed the furniture, moved my desk into the corner by the window where the light actually reached in the mornings. It felt like reclaiming space that had been slowly taken from me without my noticing. He, on the other hand, unraveled. Word traveled fast in our circles. Friends who had been neutral at first stopped returning his calls. The ones who'd witnessed the party firsthand didn't need explanations. They'd seen his face when the recording played, the moment the story flipped, and he realized he was no longer in control. That kind of public exposure doesn't fade quietly. It sticks. He tried spinning new versions anyway, told people I trapped him in an abusive marriage, said I'd ruined his career out of spite, claimed the recording was some elaborate setup meant to destroy him. Most of it fell flat. Too many details didn't line up. Too many people remembered how carefully he'd curated his performance that night. Lies collapse when they have to keep changing shape. The legal consequences kept coming. His firing became official. HR confirmed both he and his affair partner violated company policy. No severance, no quiet exit. That loss hit him harder than the house ever did. His sense of identity had been tied to his job, to looking successful, admired. Without it, he spiraled. He showed up again one afternoon unannounced, pounding on the door like he could still force his way back into my life. I didn't open it. I spoke through the security system instead, told him to leave or I'd call the police. He screamed that I was heartless, that I was enjoying this, that I'd always been cold. I recorded it all. When he finally left, I sent the footage straight to my lawyer. Then came the car fallout. Selling it had been legal, clean, and final, but he couldn't accept that. He sent emails threatening lawsuits that went nowhere. His lawyer tried to frame it as financial abuse. Mine sent back the title, payment history, and proof I'd made every single payment. The judge barely entertained the argument. It was my property. End of discussion. The settlement terms locked in shortly after. The house was mine, confirmed beyond appeal. My retirement stayed mostly intact, split favoring me because of his infidelity. Spousal support was temporary and capped. He walked out of that courtroom smaller than he'd ever looked, clutching a folder that contained the remains of the life he'd tried to rig in his favor. I walked out lighter. That same week, I got news I hadn't expected. A promotion at work, $15,000 more a year. Perfect timing. It didn't factor into the settlement at all. I laughed when HR told me, the sound sharp and surprised even to my own ears. Life has a strange sense of humor sometimes. I paid off my own car with money I'd saved instead of pouring it into someone else's mess. I started playing basketball again, joined a rec league on a whim. He used to say it was immature for a married woman. Turns out it was fun. I slept better. I breathed easier. Therapy helped untangle the parts of me that still felt foolish for not seeing the signs sooner. He sent one last message near the end, a text that read, "Hope you're happy. You destroyed my life." I stared at it for a long time before replying. Just once. I didn't destroy anything. I refused to be your victim. There's a difference. Then I blocked the number for good. The divorce finalized quietly, signed, sealed, and filed without ceremony. When the judge confirmed it was done, I felt a rush of relief that surprised me with its intensity. Not because I hated him, but because the uncertainty was finally gone. The chapter was closed, not just legally, but emotionally. Life after didn't feel dramatic. It felt stable, and that was enough. The house became mine in every sense. New furniture, new routines, new memories forming without the weight of constant suspicion. I invested the money I'd freed up. That $850 a month still stung, but it had an end date. 2 years, manageable, temporary, a price for clarity. I started dating again, slowly. Coffee dates, conversations without pretense, remembering what it felt like when someone actually listened instead of performing. One woman joked that the party recording was the coldest move she'd ever heard. She meant it as a compliment. I took it as proof that I'd trusted my instincts when it mattered. My family rallied around me in ways I hadn't expected. My brother and I grew closer, meeting for dinner weekly. Sometimes we talked about the divorce, sometimes we didn't. My mom called occasionally just to check in. No advice, no judgment. Just, are you okay? And for the first time in a long time, the answer was yes. I heard through mutual friends that he was still struggling, living on his sister's couch, fighting constantly, still blaming me for everything that went wrong. The affair partner disappeared from his life the moment real consequences arrived. Funny how fast that kind of devotion evaporates. People asked if I felt guilty about how public it all became. I didn't. He chose the venue. He invited the witnesses. He planned the accusation. I just changed the ending. Would I have preferred honesty from the start? Of course. Would I have wanted 7 years to mean what I thought they meant? Absolutely. But wishing doesn't rewrite history. Actions do. Now my days are quieter. Better. I wake up in a house that feels like home instead of a stage. I go to work without dread. I play basketball. I laugh with friends. I plan trips without checking anyone else's mood first. I don't miss being married to him. I miss the idea I had of us, the version of the story that turned out to be fiction. Letting that go was the hardest part. He tried to play chess with my life. I flipped the board. No regrets.